See, we're live. Hello. So I'll just wait until anybody posts in the comments that they're watching, and then I'll do proper introductions. Okay, that's cool. I can see your screen now.
So now if I do this.
I'll add it to screen like that. There we go. There we go.
Should we leave
Beautiful.
it on for now, and then you can shift back?
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, animals, minerals and vegetables, welcome to an hour-long workshop with myself and with Alison Smith. She's going to be doing a geometric sculpture workshop, as you can see in front of her. And I'm just going to be here sort of just in the background, looking at the comments, asking questions and being annoying basically for everybody else in the chat, stuff like that. So I'm going to pass everything over to Alison, and you can kind of take it away.
Cool.
I've got a cup of tea, so yeah.
Amazing. So I'm just going to exit so that I can see you all. So if you can bring my face up, Adam.
Yeah, sure.
Rather than this crazy PowerPoint screen we've got. Okay, hi everyone. So my name's Alison Smith, and I am the engagement curator at the Henry Moore Institute in Leeds, which is an art gallery. And today I'm going to run a little geometric sculpture workshop. So using pipe cleaners and straws to build interesting geometric structures. So we're going to be building a pyramid, then we're going to build a cube, and then we're going to build this prism. And these are special geometric shapes, so they're pretty cool, just generally, but they also have a lot of math and science in them as well. So as well as doing something creative and learning a technique that you can then use to make other sculptures, so once you've figured out how to make these shapes, you can then go free form and just do whatever you want with them. But we're going to look a little bit at the maths and the science as well. So if you're doing homeschooling at the moment, then this is a good tick in your little homeschool planner. And you can tell your teachers, if you haven't been at school for a while, that you've been doing maths and science whilst making sculptures. So we're just putting a little bit of that in with the art and the creativity, because actually maths and science are really important when it comes to making sculptures. So I think we're going to go to my screen, Adam, if that's possible.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show you some images and talk you through some stuff before we get making. So we're going to need 6 paper straws, 8 pipe cleaners, a pair of scissors, a ruler, and a pencil in order to make these sculptures. Now, it'd be really, really useful for us to know whether or not you are sat at home ready with all of your materials, because if you are, then I will pause at the appropriate times so that you can catch up and make sure that you've done your task and you're ready to go on to the next step. If you haven't got your materials at home at the moment, that's fine, don't worry. You can come back and watch this video because we're going to save it as a video afterwards, or you can download the PDF resource that we have on our website. So you can do it another time and just watch today and just see what it's all about. Or if you are making along with us, then let us know and I will make sure you've got time for each different task. But we're going to talk a little bit about sculpture first. So I'll get cracking with that. So this is where I work. This is the Henry Moore Institute, which is in Leeds City Centre. Obviously, like most places, galleries, museums, it is closed at the moment. And we are going to reopen later on in the year. But normally I host schools and groups and families at the Institute, and we always show exhibitions of sculpture. So sculpture is 3D artwork of any kind. And I run loads and loads of different workshops and activities where we think about how we make sculpture, what we can make it out of, and different kind of methods and techniques that you can try at home. This is a sculpture by Henry Moore. So Henry Moore set up the Henry Moore Institute. He was a really famous artist, one of the most famous British artists that has ever lived. And he made loads of sculptures that look a bit like this. Now, the reason I'm showing you this, partly because it's a nice Henry Moore that's in Leeds. It's right next to the Institute, in front of Leeds Art Gallery. Because I want to think a little bit about sculpture and also about how maths and science are involved in it. So this is one of his reclining figures. Henry Moore made loads of sculptures like this, which kind of look like a person, but they're also not, they don't look exactly like a person. They're not exactly realistic. And in art, that's what we would call semi-abstract. So it does look a little bit like something real, but not exactly. So the artist has used their imagination and changed the shape of it to kind of experiment with that shape and make it something new. So today, we're going to make these sculptures that look like these very important geometric shapes. But actually, you can then use this technique to make your own stuff, to make your own structures and shapes. They don't need to look like anything. They can be completely abstract. So it's quite nice to think about sculpture in that way, that it doesn't need to look like something. Also, when Henry Moore was making these sculptures, he would have used loads of maths and science, and he was really interested in maths, we know that. So things like measuring things, weighing your materials, knowing how to build strong structures and use science is all really important in sculpture. So these are just some other examples of sculpture, because the things that Henry Moore made were kind of more traditional when we think of art and sculpture now, in the way that, you know, people make art now. His work was all bronze or stone, but artists make sculptures out of loads and loads of different materials. So you can use anything to make a sculpture. And actually our partners, Yorkshire Sculpture International, who is a big festival that we had last year, they've got a thing at the moment online called A Sculpture a Day. So you can go on Instagram and you can share a sculpture every day made out of random stuff from around your house. But these just show that you can use ice. So Andy Goldsworthy uses ice to make sculptures. Anish Kapoor creates these enormous sculptures that are kind of almost like buildings that take up a whole hillside. Senga Ngudi, her work down on the bottom right there, that's made out of water and plastic. So basically like massive ice pops. And Wolfgang Leib makes artwork out of loads of piles of rice and sand and pollen. So you can make art out of anything. But all of these artworks use lots of maths and science in order to make them work. So in order to measure things, make sure that they are going to fit together, make sure they're going to stand up, make sure that they're strong structures. So the things you're going to learn today about how to make a structure are really useful for loads of different things. And actually, if you're here as a Minecraft fan, you'll probably know all about building structures. You know, that's what you do.
That's true.
So we're going to get on to the shapes that we're going to make. Now, these are quite special shapes. So I've already shown you the pyramid, the cube, and the prism that we're going to make. So the pyramid is also known as a tetrahedron, and the cube and an octahedron is a prism. And these are part of a really special group of shapes called the Platonic solids. It's a kind of complicated name, but it's quite a simple idea that these are 5 shapes that have very special qualities. And they were discovered in ancient Greece by a man called Plato, which is why they've got this name, the Platonic solids. And ever since they were discovered in ancient Greece, they've been used to look at things like maths and science and explore space and nature. So loads and loads of different people have used these shapes to explore how things work. They have a special, 2 special rules to be a Platonic solid. Now, Adam, if it's easy enough, can you go back to me for a moment?
Sure.
Right. I'm going to escape for a sec. Escape from the PowerPoint. So a Platonic solid, there are 2 rules that make something a Platonic solid. It's kind of like a club. Like if you're a shape, you need to have this 2 certain things that you can do. So one is that all of the faces of the shape, so in maths, we call them faces rather than sides. So the faces are all identical. So that's like the flat sides. So you can see here on the pyramid, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 faces, and they are all triangles. And also, those of you who have done shapes in maths, you might know that this is an equilateral triangle. That means that all of the sides, the edges of the shapes, are the same length. And that's really crucial for when we're building our structures in a minute, because we need to make sure our straws are all the same length, because if they're not, then our shape's going to be really wonky. So that's one rule, that all the sides are exactly the same. So this one has triangles, the cube has squares, so it has 6 identical squares. I mean, you can see there, these are not exactly kind of structurally sound. They are a bit bendy, but that's okay. And the prism has triangles as well. So you can see lots and lots of identical triangles that make it up. The other thing is the corners. So one rule is the faces and one rule is the corners. At the corners, in a Platonic solid, you have exactly the same number of edges that meet. So this is the vertex in maths. The vertex of the shape has the same number of lines or edges that meet. So in this one, that's 3. So you can see there are 3 straws that meet at each corner. The same on the cube. So the cube also has 3 that meet in each corner. And the prism has 4. And this is also important to think about when we're making, because we're going to have to make these little things that connect our corners together. So we need to know how many we need on our connectors. So how many kind of prongs on our hubs, which will make sense in a moment. So Adam, if we could go back to my slides, I will go back to here. So that's the Platonic solids. Those are the rules of these 5 shapes. As I said, we're going to make the pyramid, the cube, and the prism today. But also, I'm going to show you the icosahedron because I've made one ready to show you. And when I've done this workshop with people last summer, we made loads of icosahedrons, and it's a really fun one to make. But you will need more stuff. You'll need more straws and pipe cleaners. So that might be one for another day. So the Platonic solids are, as I've said, really important in maths. There's lots of things that they do that other shapes don't do, and they're really useful for exploring how things work in maths. But also geometry, these shapes and structures and patterns occur loads in nature. So this is just a little image of loads of examples of where you can find these geometric patterns in the natural world. So things like shells, plants, flowers, vegetables, snowflakes, even the weather, and in space. You get these certain patterns that you can follow, and there's loads of maths in those patterns. So you could literally map it out. You could measure out and make one of those spirals, or like the crazy cauliflower, and you could literally draw out exactly the measurements of all of those little bits of structures. These things are pretty cool. These are called diatoms, and they are tiny, tiny little organisms. They're a bit like plankton. So if you've watched like The Blue Planet, and you'll have seen the fish and the whales and those sea creatures that eat plankton, which is exists in the oceans, and it's like a tiny, it's almost like dust to us because it's so tiny. So these are a little bit like plankton, but they exist in fresh water, and they come in all these crazy shapes. So when you look at them under a microscope, this is what you can see. And these are some drawings that were done quite a long time ago by a man. The one on the left is by a man called Ernst Haeckel, and he drew all these beautiful drawings of diatoms. And you can see in some of those diatoms, some of the same shapes that we were looking at in the Platonic solids. And on the right, the drawing there, you can see that's basically like if you chopped one in half and you looked at the structures and the patterns inside. So these shapes are really important in nature as well as maths. So there's loads of cool stuff going on there. This is a virus sculpture. So as well as things like diatoms, there's also Platonic solids in things like viruses. Now, I actually did a few weeks ago when I was planning this resource, look at the coronavirus, and I don't think it's got a Platonic solid in it. But this is a polio virus, and it's actually an icosahedron. So I worked with the virology department at Leeds University, and I made this sculpture a couple of years ago for them, which is a kind of interpretation of that virus. And I had to learn how to make an icosahedron in order to make this sculpture. And every single triangle on there is identical. So it's all got different textures and surfaces, and it's all made out of recycled plastic. But all of those panels that make it up are all the same. So that's the same kind of structure that we're going to make. These are just some more examples of geometry in art. So sculptures, an artist that like to use these this kind of geometry in their work. So Gago, the image on the left, that was at the Henry Moore Institute a few years ago. And you can see in that image, the lines and the connectors are kind of really similar to what we're going to do today. He used wire and made these enormous structures that hung from the ceiling. And they're kind of see-through, and you can walk around them and see all the different lines within them. But he was really interested in making these crazy structures out of lines. And Peter Randall Page, the image on the right, he's a British sculptor who works with stone. So he carves stone, and he makes loads of work that is inspired by the natural world, by things like seeds and plants and pine cones and biology, so people's bodies. So this one, you can see it looks a bit like a pine cone or something you'd find, you know, like a seed in a plant or on a tree, but it's also got loads of maths in it. So all of those little bumps are exactly the same, and they're all in straight lines. So it's kind of where maths and nature meet in his work. These images are by an artist from Leeds, a friend of mine called Dominic Hopkinson, and all of his work is about maths and about geometry and shapes, and he explores how you can take the maths of these shapes and make sculptures out of it. So that his work is really, really cool and really relevant to what we're going to do today. And finally, a couple of other images. So Roisin Doreen, he made loads of sculptures like this that looked at geometric shapes and structures and kind of architecture, so things like to do with buildings. And then Ben Long, this is his horse sculpture made out of scaffolding. And this really made me think of, I really thought of this when I was planning this activity, because I thought actually Ben would have had to do exactly the same as what we're going to do, where he has to measure out all of these things perfectly so that he can build this structure. And I actually think it'd be a really cool challenge afterwards for someone to think, right, well, now I know how to put these pipe cleaners and straws together to make a cube or a pyramid. What if I tried to make something more complicated? You know, maybe you could try and make a horse. Who knows? You can see. So that's a good challenge, to take some inspiration from Ben. So we're going to get making. I think we need to swap back to my webcam, which should. Let's see. This is where the technical difficulties will start. Let's see. Here we go. So you should be able to see my hands. So to begin with, yeah, we can see our hands. You can see my hands. So first of all, we're going to get our straws. So we should have 6. Let me see if I've got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so we should have 6 paper straws. And in order to make these shapes, so the prism and the cube especially, we actually need 12. We need 12 edges of our shape. So we need to chop these in half. But as I said, it's important to have an equilateral triangle. So it's important for these to all be the same size. Sorry, my cable's getting in the way there. Let's move that out of the way. So we need to make sure all our edges are the same size. So we're going to measure them. So this is where your ruler and your pencil come in. You're going to measure your straw, and then we're going to divide that number by 2 and make a little mark on the straw and then cut it in half. So you're cutting in half, but you're just doing it very precisely so that we don't mess up and have a wonky shape. So my straw is 19.6 centimeters long. I'm not very good at maths, but you could use a calculator. You can do this. You can ask someone to help you, but I worked out in advance that is 9.8 centimeters. So I'm going to mark it at 9.8 centimeters, and then I'm going to cut my straw in half. Now, you may see a cat appear in my background if you're lucky. They might want their YouTube premiere, we never know. So those are my 2 straws that I've cut and that I've measured and cut, so you can see that they're exactly the same length. And now, rather than measuring all my straws, I'm just going to now use that as my template. So I'm going to just hold that up against the next straw. Just going to get in a better position for my webcam. And then I'm going to cut. So use that as a guide and cut the rest of your straws in half. Oh, knocking my webcam, there we go. So I'm just going to keep hold of those other two. You can just keep hold of one if you want to. And we're just going to cut. So keep doing that with all your straws until you have 12 straws that are the same length. Okay. So just to double check them, make sure we've not gone really wrong somewhere. Just going to line them all up and check. Now they don't have to be exact. We're not going to be to the millimetre here, but I'm pretty happy with those. I think they're pretty much the same size. So I think we're good to go with them. I'm just going to make sure we're in the best position for our viewing. Okay, so we have our 12 straws, they're cut, they're ready to go. Now we need to make our connectors. So just to show you on here, you can see we've got all of our straws are the edges, and when they join at the corner, we need to use our pipe cleaner to make one of these, which is I call a hub. Now, this is where our corners come in. So if you remember on our pyramid and our cube, there are 3 straws that meet at each corner, which means we need to make this hub that has 3 prongs. So in order to do that, we're going to use our pipe cleaners and we're going to do a little bit more measuring to make sure that we make them nice and even. So pipe cleaner. Now these are quite short pipe cleaners. If you're using your materials from your mini play box, which I know some of you might be, because if you've got a mini play box through the scheme that Emma and a lot of organisations in Leeds have been running, you will have these length of pipe cleaners. If you're using pipe cleaners that you just bought at a shop, then they might be longer, and that's fine as well. And sometimes it's a little bit easier if they're longer, but these will do fine. So my pipe cleaner, I'm just going to measure it, is 15 centimetres long. Now for this first hub, I need to divide that by 6. Because I need to have 3 prongs. So if I just go back to my little example. So if I have 3 prongs and I want them to be equal, so I want each one to be the same length, and I have them folded. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just going to shut down my Facebook so you don't get pinging from other people. So we've got 6 sections of pipe cleaner that are going to make up our little hub there. So we're going to divide 15 by 6, and that's 2.5. So if you're doing this at home, your pipe cleaner might be a different length. So take that number, divide it by 6, and then you're going to measure. So I'm going to measure to 2.5, and I'm going to make a bend in my pipe cleaner there. So you can see I've just made one bend at the top that's 2.5 centimetres in. Now, that's all the measuring we need to do, luckily. Now what we're going to do is make a zigzag. So we're going to start with that one section, and I'm going to use that as a guide. So we're going to go down, and then where it meets at the bottom, so if you can see where it meets at the bottom of that first little bend, we're going to bend again. So we're making a zigzag, and each section of this zigzag is going to be the same length. And if we have measured correctly, we should be able to get the right number of bends. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I've actually, bonus, got a little bit left over. So you can see there that I've got my 2, I think of it as like 1, 2, like 3 little mountains, but I've got an extra bit. But actually that will come in very useful. So don't worry if you've got a little extra bit at the end. So we've got our zigzag with our 3 little points, and those 3 points are going to become our hub prongs. So we're going to start off by holding that first one and then bending the second one around, and then bending the third one around again, to get our shape. So you can see now we've got our extra bit sticking up, but we've now got the right sort of shape for our hub. Now that extra bit is really useful because if we were to put that hub there as it is into our shape, so we were going to start building one of our shapes, then the corner might come apart because of this. So you can see there, it's not really connected very well in the middle, and we want it to be connected and nice and strong. So if, like me, you've got a little bit extra at the end of your third prong, you can use that to wrap around the middle. So all I did there was just wrap that extra bit around so it's kind of connecting those together. But if you don't have an extra little bit, which you might not do, if you've measured and folded perfectly, you might just have, it might just end in the middle. Then what you can do is take two of your legs of the hub and just twist it around. And once you've twisted it, give it what I call the pull test. So you want to pull on all the legs of your hub. And if they don't come apart, then it passes the test and it's done. Okay, so for the first shape we're going to do, you need to make 4 hubs. Now, I'm not going to steal that one. I'm going to put that one back. So if you are making live, now is your chance to make your hubs. Do let us know if you are making live, because I will give you time to catch up. But if you're not, I'm just going to really quickly use some that I've already got before. I'm going to make one more. So let's try it again. When you make your 4 hubs, I'll just do another little demo here. When you're making your 4, once you've made 1 and you're like, right, happy with that, I know that's right, rather than measuring again, what you can do is just you use that first one as a guide. So you can just use that as a guide to make your first bend. And then remember, you're going to do 6 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, I've done that wrong, haven't I? I've got one extra bend. Never mind. So what you really need there is those 3. So it's going to look like a little mountain range of 3 mountains. And then you're going to bend them around to make your hubs. And again, I seem to have an extra bit. Maybe I measured wrong. And I'm going to use that extra bit just to wrap around the middle. So that's our 3-pronged hubs. So once you've got 4, then you're ready to do the next stage. So I've now got 4, as you can see on my table, and they all pass the pull test. Just make sure that they're all good, they're all strong. So now I'm ready to build my pyramid. So take Blue Peter style, let's take that one away, the one I made earlier. So a pyramid has a triangle for the base. So that's the easiest way to think about it, is start with a triangle. So the way that we use this stuff is we get our straw, we get our hub, and we put that in the end, and that becomes like your connector. Then you just get another straw and place that onto one of the other legs. And to make our triangle, you just need 1 more hub, and then another one at that end, and then you need another straw. So for this one, you just need 6 straws and 4 hubs. I'm going to put that one on there, and then we connect it all together. So that's our first triangle that forms the base of our pyramid. Now, each one of our hubs, we've got a spare leg. What we're going to do with them is bend them upwards, because this is where it goes from 2D, so a flat sort of shape, to 3D. And then we need our other 3 straws. Now you can be colour coordinated if you like. If you want to make them with special colours, you can, depending on what straws you've got. So now what I've done there is I've just put a straw on each one of those hub prongs. So they're all sticking upwards. And then I just need my final hub that's going to go and join them at the top. So I've popped it in one there. And then I just need to bring the other 2 together. And you need to just bend, make a little bend, so get it in the right direction. And then you can slide that onto the last one. And there we go, that is our pyramid complete. And now we can check our measurements, because if they were all wrong and wonky, then the shape wouldn't look right. But we can see now that it's pretty good. Our measurements there were pretty good. Okay, so that's your pyramid. So if you are limited on your materials, if you've only got the 6 straws and the 8 pipe cleaners that we told you, which is fine, doesn't matter if you haven't got any more, then we're going to take our pyramid apart to then make our cube and our prism. If you have loads of straws and pipe cleaners, and maybe if you're watching this back, if you're not watching live, then you can just use other straws and pipe cleaners. So you might need to cut some more, you might need to make some more hubs. So for our cube, we need our 12 straws, so all 12 of the straws that we've cut, and we need 8 hubs. So if we're just using the same materials, what I'm going to do is take this apart. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 hubs, but we need 8, so we need to now make 4 more. So I'm going to use the other pipe cleaners, and I'm just going to quickly going to use these as a guide. So if you're making along with me, you can make now your 4 more hubs. So we'll make that first bend. Just keep going to make your little zigzag. Should end up looking like your 3 little mountains. And then we're going to just twist those around. That's the right shape. And now I can show you that twist again. So we just need to take, in fact, if you hold it that way and you take it so that the opening is at the bottom, and then you twist those 2 around each other just once, and that will just make sure that it holds together. Now, is it passing the pull test? Maybe we'll just twist it one more time. Just going to make another 3. And when we make our prism in a minute, so we'll do the cube next, and then we'll make the prism. When we make our prism, because that one has got 4 straws that meet at each corner, we need to make new hubs, so we need to make them with 4 prongs. That's another one. And then if you decide to take on the challenge that I'm going to set you at the end, if you do have plenty of materials to hand, if you're going to take on my challenge to make the icosahedron, then you will need to make 5 pronged hubs. And that's when you kind of do need a longer pipe cleaner. These little 15 centimetre pipe cleaners probably would be a little bit tricky to do that. But a lot of the pipe cleaners that you can get in like Wilkinson's and in pound shops, they're normally longer, they're normally like 30 centimetres long. So I'll show you my 5 pronged hubs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, one more. Okay, so we now have all of our hubs. So as we started with a triangle for the pyramid, the easiest place to start with our cube is to start with a square. So we're going to build a little square at the bottom. So again, just start by putting a hub in the end of your straw, and you're just going to use these to start building your shape. It's kind of a bit like Meccano. I think of it like that, like homemade Meccano. So there we go, we've got our straw at the bottom, there's our 2D shape, and now we're going to bend up these legs of our hubs to become 3D. So that we'll post these on the ends. And then we're going to add hubs on top. Now, if you're running out of things to do at home, if you're getting a bit bored because you've been at home for a long time, then you could turn your sculptures into a game as well. So you could make puzzles out of them. You could make these into little houses. You could create whole cities out of them. So if you're using them at this kind of size, you'd probably need a lot of straws to make a city, but you can always chop them in half again. So I'll suggest that again at the end, that if you want to go freeform and create your own stuff, that it might be more useful to chop these into even smaller sections and make some more hubs. And then you can go crazy and make cities and all sorts of castles and whatever else you fancy constructing. So there you go. If you followed my hands there, I've literally just done my upward vertexes, and then I've joined the top with another square. And there you have it, a really nice, satisfying cube that could become whatever your imagination turns it into. So we're going to move on to the prism. That's the most complicated shape that we're going to make today. And as I said, the prism, this one has the 3 straws that meet in each corner. The prism has 4. The prism's my favourite one. I think it looks really cool from all angles. But you can see it's got 4 straws that meet in each corner, which means we need new hubs. So if you're just working with the pipe cleaners, the 6 straws and the 8 pipe cleaners, now you've got a bit of a job to do, which is to remake your hubs. Now, do we know if anyone's watching live? Or making live even? Because if they're not...
Yeah, I don't know. I think there are a couple of people who are following along, at least.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I think Emma might be. Emma, are you?
Emma's not got any pipe cleaners, though.
But people are finding it really good, really fascinating. So, yes, she says yes, yes.
You're making. Okay, great. So we're now.
Yeah, there are a couple of making lives. I actually just suggested that it would be great next if we did this again to have some of those people in, so we could go. Let's go live too.
Yeah, totally. I would love to.
And then we see some people's stuff. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, so if we're making live, then we're gonna unfold our hubs. Now this feels like you've done loads of work making all these cool little hubs, and now you're gonna have to remake them. But if you haven't got any other pipe cleaners, then that's the best way to do it. So you don't need to remake them all, because for the prism, we only need 6 hubs. So what we're going to do, I'm going to painstakingly undo these hubs. If you have loads of pipe cleaners, then you can just make new ones. But because I know that in the mini play boxes, you will only have 8 pipe cleaners, then I'm going to work along with you and show you how to remake them. So just undo 6. You don't need to undo them all. So depending on how you've twisted them, this might be really easy or really annoying. This one's being quite annoying. There we go. It's like untangling a knot. That's 3. Oh, come on. There we go. 4. So if you're watching back, if you decide to come back when you've got your materials, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the bit you can fast forward or scrub, because you don't have to watch me untangle.
You just need some like jazz music in the background, just sort of like undoing music.
Undone. Cool. So now we're going to go to the 4-pronged hubs. Now we're going to get back to our ruler, because as you've guessed it, To make a 4-pronged hub, that's going to be the right kind of size. So I'm just getting my cord up sharply there. We want to make 8 sections. So we're going to take our pipe cleaner. We're going to measure it again. It's probably the same length as it was before, 15, and divide that by 8 this time rather than 6. So I get 1.87, which I've done my calculation earlier because my maths in my head is not good. So 1.87, it's about 1.9. So I'm going to go to about there and I'm going to make my first bend. And just like last time, we don't need to then measure every one. We're just going to use that as a rough guide. So this time you're going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this one is like 2 M's, is the way I kind of like to test it out and make sure it's worked properly. And if you pipe clean it, because you're using it for a second time, it might not be quite as straight as last time, but that's okay. So you should end up with a zigzag that looks like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections. So now we're going to turn that around. We're going to do exactly the same as we did before, where we kind of bend them around and they become the 4 prongs of a little cross. So this time our hubs are like little crosses. And again, we don't want all this going on. We don't want it to pull apart. So if you hold it like that, so you've got the kind of gap at the bottom, and then you take those 2 prongs and just holding them up together, just twist them around. And that way we have got a nice strong center. And again, we'll do the little pull test where we just pull on the prongs to make sure they're not going to come apart. So to make our prism, we need 6 of those. So I'm just going to quickly do 6. Now I'm not going to measure them all because I'm going to trust. Now I shouldn't trust myself, should I? I'm not very good at guessing. Let's do it properly. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8. Now I do have other methods for making these. Sometimes when I made about 200 of them last year at the Waterfront Festival in Leeds. But this, I find that this way is the easiest way of kind of making sure that they're nice and even, and also the easiest way of sort of explaining it to people, because sometimes, especially when you're an artist, you do things with your hands and you don't even think about them. And then when you try to explain it to somebody else, it's actually quite complicated to break it down. So I thought this little zigzag method is quite a nice way of explaining it. So that's 3. Now, do be careful with these pipe cleaners with the ends of them, because they can get a little bit sharp, especially if you're doing this with a younger sibling. If you're having a younger sibling help out, just make sure you don't stab them in the finger. And this is a really good activity for younger kids as well. Obviously they might not be able to make the hubs, but if you do have a younger brother or sister, or if you're a parent at home and you're doing this with one of your littler ones, then you might need to make the hubs for them. But once they've got the hubs and the straws, it's basically just a bit like a kind of a toy. You just build and see what you can make with it. Especially good for a day like this where it is pouring with rain where I am in Leeds. Okay, one more. So if you are making live, if you are making along with me, hopefully you are keeping up just about, but I'm sure if you're not, you'll be able to catch up very easily. So there's our 4 pronged hubs, and we have 6 of them there. So I'm going to pull this apart. Oh no, hang on, I'm pulling apart one of my examples. I don't need to pull that apart, I've already got my straws. So I need, how many straws do I need? I need 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, Yep, I've got all my 12 straws, just making sure that I haven't lost one on the floor. So to make the prism, the way I like to think of it is the centre of the prism is a square. So if you can see in the middle there, that is a square, and then it's got kind of a pyramid that comes out on one side, and then a pyramid that comes out on the other. But these pyramids, rather than having 3, have got 4 edges. So think of it as a square in the centre, and then a pyramid and a pyramid. So we'll start with the square. We're going to do exactly the same as before, just put our hubs in the ends, start to build our shape. Sometimes with your hubs, if they're a bit kind of wonky or they've got a little bit sticking out, you might just need to shove them down a little bit further and kind of bend them into the right shape to work with whatever you're making at that time. Ooh, that one's got a bit bendy. So we'll start with a square, and then we go to our 3 dimensions. So we're going to, with these ones, one of these prongs is going to come upwards, and the other prong is going to end up pointing downwards. So start off by just pulling one of those prongs up, and then you're going to pop a straw on each one. And if any of you are Leeds based and have been to any of the Playbox events, or if you visited a Playbox, you might have seen the amazing Wonder Dome. Now, the Wonder Dome is very similar to this, and you actually could build a dome, which is called a geodesic dome, using this method. You would need to cut 2 lengths of straws, though, to do that, because as Emma and I know from experience, there are 2 different lengths of sticks that make the geodesic dome. But geodesic domes, if you've never seen one before, you should Google it because they're really cool. I quite want one for my garden, but it's not big enough. So what I've done there, I've got my square at the bottom, and I've just added my straws to each corner and then joined them at the top, just like we did with the pyramids before, join them together. And then you just do exactly the same on the bottom side. So we've bent those prongs to face the right way, and then we'll just pop our straws in the end of there. But yeah, I think that's a good task for anyone who is in Leeds, who is a Playbox veteran. I think somebody should build us a miniature Wonder Dome so that we can remember all the fun times we've had playing in that dome over the years, and we'll have many more to come in the future. So again, we're just going to join those straws at the point at the bottom, and there you have it. We have our prism. Now this is a good demonstration of what will probably happen at some point. These will pop out. So if that happens, just sort of give your hub a little bit of a wiggle, just try to sort of get it so it's in the right direction. And just sort of give them a little bit of a squeeze at the corners. But there you go, there's your prism. Now, I made one of these last year, and I just had it on my coffee table for a while because I thought it was very satisfying to look at. You could, if you wanted to, you could just put it on a shelf. You could hang it in your windows. You could hang it from the sort of point at the top, put some string around it. Now, if you were going to do that, you might want to stick things together. But I'll tell you about that in a second, because first, I think the best thing to do once you've made all these 3 shapes, so you've made your pyramid, you've made your cube, my cube's looking slightly sad now because I've started to take it apart, you've made your prism, you might have just got one because you've taken those ones apart to make the prism, but you might think, right, well, I want to keep one of these shapes forever, or actually you might think, now I'm going to use this method and build something else. So if you've got other straws that you can add in, you can add more stuff. You can start to kind of experiment. So if I use some of my spare hubs from here, so you can start to think, right, well, where else could I go with this shape? You know, what else could I do? So, you know, start to kind of build outwards from an existing shape. Or like I said, you can invent your own shapes like this, or you can make a whole city You can make crazy abstract sculptures. You could make loads of things and hang them all in your window, so you've got a kind of amazing array of different geometric structures hung together. You can start to put them together as well, so you can make quite interesting structures by sort of stacking them on top of each other, and you know, adding different bits to make some really, really cool shapes. One thing you could do next, though, if you've got lots of straws and pipe cleaners, or if you're allowed to get some more from the shop, pound shops generally do have this stuff, then this is a task. A geodesic dome would be great too, but this is the icosahedron. So the icosahedron, you need 30 straws. So if you're going to do it how we've done it today, you'd need 15 paper straws that you then cut in half. Or if you were going to be clever, you could use 10 straws and then cut them into thirds. So obviously you'd need to think about your calculations, you need to measure them carefully. But if you had 10 straws cut into 3, then you could make your 30 straws to make this. And then you just need 12 hubs. So if you've got your 8 pipe cleaners, you are going to need a few more pipe cleaners. But if you could get 4 more pipe cleaners and a few more straws, then you could make this. And this is a much more complicated shape. It takes a little bit longer to make. I'm not going to show you how to make it now, but I'm pretty sure you could work it out yourselves. It's all triangles. There are 20 triangles around the shape. And if you've got exactly the right number of straws and hubs, it makes it easier. If you've got extra straws lying around, then you might end up going a bit wrong somewhere because it has to sort of join together. If you've got exactly the right number of straws, then it's a bit easier because you can only go so far and start to join them up. But it's a really good one to sort of do as a bit of a challenge. You have to do a bit of problem solving, figure out where you might have gone wrong. And it's really beautiful as well. I have actually just made my friend's baby a light shade out of one of these. So I made a big one using full length straws, and then put another icosahedron inside it that has the light bulb inside. So you could make some really cool stuff for your room making one of these. And that's about it. So that's my challenge.
That's amazing. We're all like, oh, I've been Toy Story, all these little aliens. Oh, it's like really amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, I was like, that's the 20-sided dice from my D&D days. I was like, I recognize that. Yeah,
exactly. It totally is. So you can make your own giant versions of them, and you could, when I made the light shades and have made other sculptures, I've used paper, like cut out the triangles and actually put the sides on it as well. And I made a model one. You can get nets as well. So if you get into the geometric stuff, if you just Google like icosahedron net. So when you do maths,
sausages.
Then you can print it off. So you can get like free images where you just print off the net. Like you would in maths, and then cut it out, and you've got the little tabs, and then you have to glue them together.
Yeah, you cut the whole thing out, and so
you can make your own D&D dice or whatever.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Has anybody got any questions? Well, we've got a little bit of time. We've got about 5 more minutes left. So Emma, come on. Let's get this. There's a couple of Emmas actually, both Bim and Emma Sullivan in the chat. They said we managed to make a pyramid, and Ruby wants to make an icosahedron.
Yes.
We'll put this on this video, of course. If you've got to the end of the video and you're watching live, brilliant, well done, you guys. I'll take this video down off YouTube, and we'll be posting it on a range of different platforms as well later on. So you'll be able to watch it all over again and again and again.
Yeah, if you need to.
Yeah, if you need to.
On the Henry Moore Institute website, there is a PDF that you can download. So if you're sick of watching the video, or if you just want to print it off and do it away from a screen, then you can just look at the PDF.
Right. Have you got that? Do you want to Google that yourself? And I'll put your screen up there so we can kind of see that in front of us, and then people have got that, and then we can kind of just we can sort of talk about that as well. That might be really cool. Just see the Henry Moore.
So if I share.
Yeah, let me know when you've got it up, and I'll put your website up on the full screen.
Loading. It's taking a while to load today.
I just also want to while we're loading a web page, just thank everybody in the chat and the comment section. So there's been a few of Wizard Keen fans in there as well. So just want to say a big hi and shout out to them.
Cool.
And obviously, you're sort of bringing the YouTuber Makers Club as well to this channel as well, just sort of to all this kind of stuff. And if you are enjoying this kind of content, do make sure you comment and stuff like that. And if you have any more suggestions and stuff, we'd love to hear about them too.
I'm still trying to find my page. Come on, where is it? This is where all the back.
And if not, I'll just start singing in a minute. I was wondering whether I've got any shaped things. Oh, for everybody in there, let me just go kind of reach up here. Just sort of, I know that we've got some sort of Stampin' and Wizard Keen fans. So I'll just sort of show you these two here. These are my kind of Stampin' Keen models that I've got here, which you might recognize from Wonder Quest. We've had a lot more people talking about Wonder Quest now. So there's Stampin' and Keen. I also got, which was really interesting, I also got Flunky and Lackey as little kind of characters there. And also my arch nemesis, aka my brother. So we've got all the kind of characters there, which is really cool.
I'm really not having a good time on my website, my own website.
Oh dear. Well, I'd say, I mean, that's that. Let's get all that sorted out, and we can kind of, when we publish on Facebook and stuff like that, we can put it up there too. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Are you hit the target? Someone just said, no, I'm not. No. And, nobody knows. I think it's squid probably. But anyway, who knows? No, I've never played Hit the Target. I have played one of it, the reindeer, a couple of times. Anyway, I just want to sort of finish this up by saying thank you very much to Alison. If we could have a virtual round of applause.
Go back to my face.
Yeah, try to. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. So that was amazing, and I love the kind of all the history and stuff like that as well, right at the beginning, and just sort of contextualizing it with art, with real art and science and stuff like that. And making that make sense and stuff for us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think as a maker, you're a maker. And obviously, some of the stuff you make is in Minecraft, and some of it is in the real world.
Yeah.
I think as makers, we all kind of think in these 3 dimensions. So it's quite nice to be able to, come up with these different ways of building in space.
Yeah.
So I think of it as like sculptural thinking. If you get your brain thinking in 3D, then you can then run with it and make things in loads of other different materials as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's a nice way of ending it. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all later. Ta-da.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye.